The room is filling up. Is it okay? Yes, we start? Okay. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining the session. The room is filling up here. I am Amy Duchel, Senior Forestry Officer at the Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN, and I am pleased to be the moderator of today's session on collective action on wildfire management, ways forward to address evolving disaster. We're very pleased with the leadership of the Korea Forest Service for organizing this event, as well as our partners from Canada, Australia, and who we will hear from all of them today. Wildfires are an increasing threat, especially to our climate action, not only for mitigation, but adaptation and resilience. But there are approaches for integrated fire management and addressing wildfires before they get out of control. And we will hear about some of those approaches today and look forward to the discussions. So without further ado, I would like to invite His Excellency Hong Sik-cho, Special Presidential Envoy for COP28 from the Republic of Korea, to deliver the opening remarks. The podium is yours.
Good afternoon. My name is, she already said, Hong Sik-cho, the Special Presidential Envoy for COP28. On behalf of the government of the Republic of Korea, I'd like to extend my warm welcome to all guests that have joined us here today. Also, I'd like to extend my gratitude to Ms. Catherine Stewart, Ambassador for Climate Change of Canada, and Canadian colleagues, Mr. Joe Buffon, Deputy Coordinator General of the National Emergency Management Agency of Australia, and Australian colleagues, Mr. Kaveh Jahedi, Director of Climate Change, Biodiversity and Environment of FAO and colleagues, and Mr. Sang-Sub Lim, Deputy Minister of the Korea Forest Service, and colleagues at KFS for jointly organizing this event and all your hard work. The urgency and reality of the climate crisis are most vividly demonstrated and experienced through the annually escalating records of wildfires worldwide. The scale and duration of the wildfires that occurred in Canada this year surpassed anything we could imagine, and the wildfire in Hawaii, as you know, took many lives. Furthermore, if you look to the past few years, the list of wildfire incidents is endless, spanning Oceania, Southern Europe, Eastern Europe, North America, and Southeast Asia. Wildfires are both a result and cause of the climate crisis. Extreme weather conditions due to climate change make forests more susceptible to burning and spread embers more widely. Moreover, the carbon emitted into the air from wildfire has a detrimental impact, accelerating climate change. The multiple mass wildfire that had occurred this year changed forests from being carbon sinks to emitters. In this context, I believe this event's theme is very, very timely. Canada and Australia, having experienced many large wildfires, foster exceptional capabilities and expertise in wildfire management. As a UN agency, the Food and Agriculture Organization leads numerous international cooperation projects and research in the field of wildfire management. Additionally, the Republic of Korea excels in incorporating innovative technologies such as using ICT for wildfire occurrence forecasting and trajectory predicting, as well as utilizing drones for monitoring and response. Alongside respected partners Canada, Australia, and FAO, Korea wishes to strengthen our cooperation by sharing knowledge and experiences in responding to wildfire disasters in the area of the climate crisis. Today's event marks the first step towards this goal. Distinguished guests, wildfires are no longer merely challenges in the forestry, firefighting, or disaster management sectors. Wildfires are pressing issues that we need to respond to for the survival of humanity and a sustainable future. To achieve this, the awareness, support, and collaboration of governments, international organizations, civil society, and the private sector are very, very essential. Hand in hand with our partners, Korea will take the lead in consolidating efforts to respond to wildfire disasters. Once again, I'd like to express my sincere appreciation and gratitude to all of you for attending this event on collective action on wildfire management. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for those opening remarks. We will now hear from three distinguished speakers, starting with Her Excellency Catherine Stewart, Ambassador for Climate Change, Canada. You have the floor.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Special Presidential Envoy Cho, for your opening remarks and for welcoming us here into the Korean Pavilion. I'm absolutely delighted to be here. This is a topic that really is important for Canada, and of course, one that's obviously very much in the front of our minds this year especially. Climate change and wildfires are a growing global issue. While they're often part of the natural ecological process in many areas, the frequency, severity, duration of these fires are being exacerbated by climate change. And Canada is at the forefront of climate change impacts, and we're warming twice the global average. And in our north, it's warming 3 times the global average. Since the 1970s, as an example, when I was a child, the area burned annually by wildfires has more than doubled, and the fire suppression and management costs have increased by $120 million per decade since the 1970s. Our 2023 wildfire season was devastating and the most destructive season on record. To date, close to 19 million hectares burned. I looked up the landmass of the Republic of Korea before coming here, and I see that it's 10 million hectares. The area burned in Canada is 19 million hectares. So it gives you the extent of what we're talking about. Primarily, the numbers for 2023 show that over 230,000 Canadians were displaced by our wildfires in our country as well. The unprecedented scope and the destruction means that we really need to turn to our allies and international partners more than ever. So over the course of the wildfire season in Canada, we had 12 countries plus the EU provide a combined 5,600 international firefighters, personnel support, and equipment and technical support to help us. And we are extremely grateful for the very, very generous support that was provided to us, including from Korea and from Australia. So my heartfelt thanks for your wonderful support during this very difficult time. The evolving nature of this challenge really does highlight the importance of collaborative efforts, including the FAO's Global Fire Management Hub, which will act as an important convening tool. And this event here today will also be very instrumental in keeping the discussion going. In September of this year, Prime Minister Trudeau hosted an event at the UN Climate Week, which really helped to bring climate leaders together and talk about the importance of climate change and natural disasters. I was very happy to see my very good friend, Ambassador Kim, there representing Korea. And we had the honor of hearing from two Canadian firefighters, fire chiefs actually, who were involved in battling the raging fires across Canada. Two very different geographic locations that they represented, and two very different climatic zones, 5,000 kilometers apart, both of them working to fight these fires at the same time. At this event, they both echoed the urgency to take action now and mitigate some of the worst potential impacts of climate change. And they also stated how grateful they were for the support from other communities across Canada and from other countries, and the incredible toll that the fires had on the first responders as well. So with this in mind, I'm very pleased that Canada can take part in this event today, and thank you very much for hosting this event. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that, and I'm sorry for what you've been through in your country. We are, and I thank you for highlighting the importance of partnerships, because we're all here to support each other in this issue. So I would now like to welcome Mr. Joe Buffon, Deputy Coordinator General of Australia's National Emergency Management Agency, who will be joining us online.
Good afternoon and good evening from Australia. Before I proceed, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which I'm presenting from, the Ngunnawal people, and pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. Ambassador and distinguished guests, thank you for the opportunity to present at this very, very important gathering today, and for being part of the Korean delegation, and I apologise that I can't be there in person. But like our Canadian colleagues, wildfire is not new to us. So in 2009, in 6.5 hours, we lost 173 people in wildfires in Australia. Then in 2019, we had fires that pretty much ravaged the eastern seaboard of Australia. And out of those fires, we saw 4,000 homes that were lost. We had 32 fatalities. And out of those fatalities, 9 of them were emergency services. The cost of that was $33.8 million. We lost 100,000 livestock. We lost hundreds of thousands of wildlife, our koalas and many, many other wildlife. And again, we had support from the international community. We had support from the US, support from Canada, support from many, many other countries, and we're very, very grateful for that. Now, right now, we're not even into our summer. In actual fact, 3 days ago was the Australian summer, and we've already had fires that were probably 8 weeks drier than what we anticipated as we moved from La Nina into El Nino. And we're sort of interested to see how quickly it's drying. Ironically now, though, we're actually dealing with floods. So we went from fires in the Northern Territory, in Western Australia, in New South Wales and in Queensland. Now we've got a little bit of reprieve with floods. So what I'd like to do, though, is talk about what are we doing about it, because my understanding was you're interested to see what are some of the specialist capabilities that we're looking at. So the first one is workforce. Australia has a significant firefighting capability with its workforce, but we run a model of career staff, both in the career firefighting services, but also in the land management agencies where we have career staff. But we rely heavily on volunteers. We have about 250,000 volunteers that support firefighting every year. The other one is around resource sharing. So Australia is a federation. We've got eight states and two territories, and then the federal government that sits across those. So we have to work within that federation, which is very, very different, although similar to our colleagues in Canada. So we have a lot in common with our Canadian colleagues. The other one is the international partnerships. I think that's critical now for us to actually link into our international partnerships. But the other thing that we've done is we're looking at technology to make sure that we can have near real-time situational awareness. So we have a national joint common operating picture that we can actually look across all of Australia and see where the fires are at any point in time. The next one is around aircraft. And aircraft is a significant part of our arsenal, but it's not the only part of our arsenal. So we've got 600 aircraft, we've got 160 aircraft specifically dedicated to firefighting for this season, with another 500 that are available, and which play a significant role, including large air tankers and large helicopters. Another critical part, though, is we have changed the Australian fire danger rating system with the latest science, the latest data, so that we can actually forecast and predict where the fires will potentially be and warn the community. So another key part to how we operate in Australia is that the community is part of the firefight. The other one is around predictive services. So we put a lot again into data sets, and so that our scientists can actually predict where the fire will go, the intensity of that fire, the sorts of suppression activities that we can actually undertake. And then finally, we have a national bushfire intelligence capability that looks at utilising again and standardising data sets across the country so that we can feed those technology systems. Another key part of our approach is national coordination, and we have a principle of centrally coordinated but distributed execution, so that the actions and the activities and the tactical operations actually occur locally. And it's a really, and what we do now is we bring the private sector, not-for-profits, and governments, so the federal government and state and territory governments together under our national coordination mechanism so that we can get the best coordination and optimisation of our capabilities. And then finally, we have a recovery system that is linked into the response system so that very quickly we can support communities and business to get their communities and society operating as quickly as possible. So the key thing, couple of key messages out of this for us. Number one, partnerships both at the local level, at the national level, and the international level. Two, best use of technology, data, and systems. And three, ensuring that we are directly connected and engaged with the community. And if I could leave you with a couple of challenges that we have. One of the big challenges that we have is the overlap of the Northern Hemisphere fire seasons and the Southern Hemisphere fire seasons. So that means that fire seasons are getting longer and more intense with a longer overlap. So now we're looking at different models in relation to sharing resources, leasing large air tankers and other aircraft to support our operations, but also a big focus on adaptation. So thank you for the opportunity to speak today, and thank you to our Canadian partners and our Korean partners for being connected, because I think that that's an important part of how we need to operate into the future. I'll stop there, and thanks very much.
Thank you so much, sir. And to conclude the welcoming remarks, I would like to call on my distinguished colleague, Mr. Kaveh Zahidi, Director of FAO's Office of Climate, Biodiversity, and Environment.
Thank you very much. Special Presidential Envoy Cho, Ambassador Catherine, Ambassador Kim, Deputy Minister, DG Lim, DG Park, dear colleagues, thank you for inviting us to join the event today. It really is a great pleasure for me to be here this afternoon with our partners, partners from the Korea Forest Service, partners from the Natural Resources Canada, and of course the National Emergency Management Agency of Australia that we just heard from, to discuss our collective action to wildfire management and look at ways forward to addressing these evolving disasters. As we've already heard, wildfires are burning longer, they're burning more intensely, and occurring in forests, occurring in peatlands and permafrost during fire seasons that are now extended in many parts of the world. Today's extreme wildfires are in a way out of balance with the natural cycle. These wildfires negatively affect, of course, our development, our sustainable development. They threaten communities and livelihoods and create an enormous amount of greenhouse gas emissions. Now, what we've done at FAO is to try to develop an integrated fire management approach, which helps governments to understand, in a way, the causes and the factors that are driving these wildfires and to try to seek long-term sustainable solutions. And the approach that we've developed is really anchored in 5 elements, the 5 R's, if you wish: review and analysis, risk reduction, readiness, response, and recovery. And I think this framework helps to ensure that all fire activities are really integrated into national policies and plans, cross-sectoral, and involve the diverse stakeholders that we've heard are so integral to us being able to confront this challenge. Now, given this increased frequency, given the increased intensity of the fires and the wildfires that we've already heard from all the speakers, integrated fire management, of course, needs to reach a very new level of acceptance, a new level of implementation from country level to community level, and involve literally each and every one of the communities affected. And we thank very much in that sense the Korea Forest Service for the opportunity to develop together the Assuring the Future of Forests with Integrated Risk Management Mechanism. It's a little bit of a mouthful, but the acronym is good, AFFIRM. So the AFFIRM mechanism, which is now being piloted in a number of countries affected by forest fires, in Cambodia, in Laos, PDR, in Thailand, in Vietnam. Now, AFFIRM feeds directly into the Global Fire Management Hub, which, Ambassador, you mentioned, which FAO officially launched with UNEP earlier this year during the 8th International Wildland Fire Conference in Portugal, and is now operationalizing with our partners. Now, this fire hub is going to help countries to reduce the negative impacts of wildfires on livelihoods, on landscapes, and of course, global climate stability. And it's going to help build the capacities to address the negative impacts of wildfires before they start. And we invite all of you here today to join us in this really important initiative. Important because clearly we're living in a new climate reality, and wildfires are part and parcel of that new reality. With Ambassador Catherine yesterday, we were at the WMO event, State of Climate, and clearly what we heard of, El Nino transitioning into La Nina, back into El Nino. These dry spells are going to get longer, they're going to get more intense. Wildfires are here as a part and parcel of this new climate reality, and we need to get ahead of the curve. So in the meantime, I very much look forward, of course, to hearing more from all of you. We are at FAO absolutely committed to continue to lead, to guide and strive for global improvement in fire management and the consequent reduction in fire-related damage and loss. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Kavi. And now I would like to invite our speakers and distinguished participants up to the stage for a photo, a group photo. That's right. We will now hear from a keynote speaker, a special keynote speaker, Professor Johann Goldhammer. Many of you know him. He's sort of a legend in integrated fire management. He's the head of the Global Fire Monitoring Center in Germany, which he founded 25 years ago, and it was actually launched at FAO in 1998. He's also the coordinator of the Global Wildland Fire Network and has established 8 regional fire monitoring centers across the globe. And I would like to welcome him here via video address. He's in transit today, so was unable to join us either in person or online. But he's here with us in video. Over to you, Johann.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, it is an honor to me to be invited to speak to you. I apologize that I cannot be with you in direct communication online because I'm traveling in this very moment. So please accept my recorded message on challenges and opportunities in risk management of increasing future fires. And I would like to briefly introduce my presentation. The challenges that we are having ahead is that the world is undergoing unprecedented rapid changes. The world is in the transition from an old equilibrium to a new climate with a lot of uncertainties. And we are going to face asymmetries, fragility, and vulnerability of the global system, not only of ecosystems, but also of humanity. However, we have opportunities to deal with fires. And let me have a look to nature and culture-based solutions and to activate our knowledge that we have. And I'm doing this in the expectation of setting up the Global Fire Management Hub. This first slide is the only slide about climate change, but what we can see is that globally the temperatures are increasing, and associated with increasing temperatures, we are facing more extreme droughts, and extreme droughts are favoring extreme wildfires. But let us have a look at the underlying causes of increasing vulnerability of our landscapes and the globes. And these are just a couple of examples, like this from Europe, where we are experiencing a rural exodus. People are migrating to the cities, to the city centers, and are giving up agriculture. And now our old agricultural cultivated lands are overgrown by vegetation, are becoming more flammable. And besides extreme droughts and fires, we are experiencing, especially here in Europe, but elsewhere in the world, extreme rainfall events that are causing additional problems after fires. And we also see that local populations in the rural space are becoming increasingly vulnerable to fire, and this includes migrating people in many parts of the world. And we are also noting that fires are threatening the natural and cultural heritage. And with these examples from Republic of Korea and from Uganda. I would like to show just two examples where fires from the surrounding vegetation have spread into very valuable cultural heritage and have destroyed it. Smoke pollution is another issue. We have experienced the smoke transport from Canadian fires to the United States and even reaching Europe. However, this is not the only place in the world. If we are looking back a couple of years ago, fires burning in Central Asia emitted smoke which was transported to the Korean Peninsula and even across the Pacific Ocean, reaching Canada and the United States. And unfortunately, during and after armed conflicts, we have increasing occurrence of fires, wildfires as collateral damages of armed conflicts. And these are representing major problems in the world. One of the issues that are of great concern is the impact of fire smoke to human health and security. And there are a number of models. One of them is from our Max Planck Institute, showing that in average, more than 180,000 people are dying prematurely because of the smoke exposure. There are indeed other calculations that indicate that we have more than 300,000 deaths per year due to smoke pollution. If we are looking back to the science, especially to the 1990s, when a number of international conferences and research campaigns have been initiated, we are looking back to a very solid fundament of knowledge about the science of fire in the Earth system. And indeed, there were a number of large international and even intercontinental research campaigns looking into the effects of fire on ecosystems and the atmosphere. Such research is still ongoing, but basically we know that the emissions of fires are impacting the atmosphere, and that many fires, wildfires, but also land use fires, are detrimental to ecosystems. And besides the research in the tropics, in the 1990s, we also addressed the role of fire in the northern environment. Just some examples of conferences, experiments, and volumes. In the 1990s, we recognized that political decision makers did not really have access to the science and to the importance of science. So we decided in the late 1990s to establish an institution that would serve the science policy interface. And in 1998, the Global Fire Monitoring Center, sponsored by the government of Germany, was opened and inaugurated in October 1998 at a meeting on public policies affecting forest fires at the FAO headquarters in Rome. And a few years later, an international group was set up under the auspices of the UN International Strategy for Disaster Reduction. The Wildland Fire Advisory Group and the Global Wildland Fire Network took off in the early 2000s. And during this time, in the late 90s and early 2000s, a number of guidelines have been developed that kind of translated the scientific knowledge for the application for users, decision makers, and policy makers. The International Tropical Timber Organization in 1998 published the first guidelines, followed by the World Health Organization and the WMO, the World Meteorological Organization, FAO, and the latest set of governance guiding principles have been developed in preparation and presented at the 8th International Wildland Fire Conference in Portugal earlier this year. Besides advanced science, we have rich expertise of local communities, indigenous, traditional local communities that have been used fire in ecosystem management and land management for centuries or thousands of years. And this is where we can benefit from this expertise, especially the expertise in the Global South, how to create fire smart or fire resilient landscapes. The Global Wildfire Network, which, as I mentioned, started in the early 2000s, comprises of 14 regional networks and 8 regional centers. The concept behind, which was presented in the early 2000s to the Interagency Task Force for Disaster Reduction at the UN, was to bring together institutions that are working at global scale, at regional scale, and finally to serve national to local scale institutions. And this has been advanced, especially through the setting up of regional fire management resource centers, or fire monitoring centers, some of them are called like that, which are providing advisory support to nations and regional organizations. Advisory support to especially develop and implement fire management policies. And here you see a list of centers that have been established starting in 2010 in Europe, followed by Mongolia, by Southeast Asia, located in Indonesia, by Central Asia, South America, and finally the youngest centers in Africa and East Africa and West Africa. Another one is currently built in South Asia in Nepal. The role of the regional wildfire networks is to create synergies, to build partnerships in the regions. And I'm just taking the example of the Pan-Asia Wildfire Network hosted by Republic of Korea, which in the last 10 to 15 years has convened a number of regional consultations, but also organized one of the international wildfire conferences in 2015 in Pyeongchang. And I'm taking this example because exactly 8 years ago, the outcomes of this conference hosted by Republic of Korea with the Pyeongchang Declaration, which was directed to the COP21, was quite important because we encouraged the international partners to consider 2 tiers of response at international level and at national and local level to bring the capacities and capabilities of integrated fire management application or systems as an accountable contribution to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So where we are today, this event later we'll talk with more contributions about setting up the Global Fire Management Hub. This hub will take advantage of all the expertise of the scientific community and the expertise of international, regional, and cross-boundary cooperation, and allow the easy access to all this information, and will provide advisory support in the end to develop harmonized approaches and interoperability. And still, UN specialized agencies like the World Meteorological Organization and the World Health Organization will continue to provide the best scientific basis for decision-making. And all this is taking place in the context of the implementation of the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction. But also there is the need to improve coordinated wildfire emergency response. There are responsibilities within the UN system. And seeking partnership with organizations and groups that are working outside of the UN system, but are connected to the UN, will show that we have valuable partnerships between the United Nations family and the civil society organizations. Regional organizations like the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe and the Council of Europe are examples where intergovernmental and regional organizations are contributing to implement the tasks and the needs of cross-boundary cooperation in fire management at global level. And if we are looking forward to the future, there's currently a UN General Assembly resolution underway, initiated by G77 and China, which at the moment seems to have a recommendation, as pointed out here on the slide, the recognition of the initiative of FAO and UNEP to set up the fire management hub. And looking into the future, the Global Fire Management Hub may have an opportunity to develop and bring all this work to an international recognized landscape fire framework. And with this, I thank you for your kind attention, and I wish you a good and fruitful meeting and discussion. Thank you.
Are we okay? If you didn't know Johan Goldhammer before, you know him now, and we're absolutely honored that he's willing to integrate this historical expertise and networks into the Fire Hub. I mean, what a way to start. So now we will go into a few thematic presentations, and these will be from the core partners of the event, and learning about best practices and leading fire management techniques and initiatives. So I would like to start with a dear friend and partner of FAO, Dr. Yoon Sing Park, Director General of the Korea Forest Service. Please, sir.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, and ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. My name is Eun-sik Park. I'm Director General of International Affairs Bureau of the Korea Forest Service. In the previous keynote speech, Professor Goldhammer shared the global efforts to respond forest fires. So in this time, I'd like to share some Korea's experience and lessons from our system. So even in early 1970s, 1/3 of the Korea territory was degraded. However, through the nationwide reforestation efforts, Korea now have the beautiful green forest. The 63% of the land territory is covered by the beautiful forest. Given the Korea's high population density and increasing growing stock in forest, the forest fire can result in a serious damage to people's life and properties. Hence, it is crucial to prevent and promptly extinguish forest fire. The forest fire statistics are telling us very bad news in Korea. In 2022, there were 740 forest fires, making a 38% increase compared to the last decade. The annual damaged area by forest fire surged, exceeding the 10-year average by more than sevenfold. It's huge. And notably, last year, we had the second largest forest fire in our history. So it burnt more than 20,000 hectares of the forest in the eastern region. The most forest fire in Korea happened by anthropogenic factors. Over half of the incidents occurred due to the high-cost mistakes, improper burning of trash or agricultural byproduct near the forest. Also, Korea's mountainous terrain and the steep slopes are coupled with the vulnerability of the pure pine forest contribute to the rapid spread of the forest fire. Generally, forest fire in Korea mainly happens in spring season due to the very dry weather. However, the climate change has altered these patterns and forest fire becoming a year-round concern in Korean society. Comparing to the forest fire occurrence pattern of the past 10 years, we can observe an increase even during the low-risk period. You can see there maybe June, July. It's usually in the rainy season in Korea, but recently, in June, July, we have very many forest fires. In Korea, the forest fires are recognized as highly threatening disaster, as I mentioned earlier, it can easily threat to the people's life and properties. Therefore, various agencies led by Korea Forest Service at the central government level collaborate to respond. Additionally, there is a well-organized forest fire response system at local government level. Actually, this system is quite common in many countries. Canada, Australia, and United States, we have a very similar systems. So I'd like to introduce some Korean systems. The response of forest fire follows several steps in Korea. The planning, prevention, the preparation, suppression, and recovery. And specifically, the firefighting involves detecting, assessing, suppressing, and closing the case. The Korea Forest Service annually formulates and announces a comprehensive forest fire management plan in early every year. This plan encompasses operation of control center, forest fire prevention strategies, and mobilization of the firefighting resources. Moving to forest fire prevention, it is very crucial to proactively avert the disaster. You know, the disaster we cannot prevent, but aversion is the best policies. The two primary prevention activities are undertaken in Korea. The first involves the campaign to increase public awareness, while the second focuses on the managing forests to reduce potential fuel for forest fires. Controlling forest fire density diminished the fuel for forest fire, and a vital aspect given the interplay of the climate, terrain, and fuel in forest fire behavior. The other efforts involving the creating fire-resistant forest and establishing buffer zones around the houses. The converting simplifying forest into mixed forest of the pine and oak species enhances resistance to forest fire. The buffer zone around the house also can be a fire break line and protect people. Moving to the preparation for fire response, the Korea Forest Service daily forecasts and announces the risk of forest fires on its website. This forecast considers the weather conditions such as humidity and wind. In the region at high risk, the KFS and local government send a text message alert to the residents in collaboration with the telecommunication companies. I think this is the very good model for the collaboration between public and private sector. And surveillance is integral to preparation phase. The forest fire watchers hired by the Korea Forest Service and local government patrol forest and monitor from lookout towers. Drones and fixed cameras are strategically placed to monitor the forest fire. While nighttime, the surveillance employs drones equipped with the thermal imaging cameras. Maybe you can see some thermal images captured by the drones at the nighttime. The subsequent steps involves responding to fires. Early detection is crucial to minimize the damage when forest fire occurs. You know that this is the disaster, so maybe the only way to to minimize the damage is to find early and respond early. The various resources, including fire watchers, drones, and helicopters, are utilized for prompt identification. The Forest Disaster Management Center at the KFS plays a pivotal role in extinguishing forest fires. It collects information from the field about the fires and makes decisions on firefighting plans, resource allocations, and evacuation measures. So fire, developed in the very serious situation. The KFS or local government issued the evacuation warning to the local residents. And the fire suppression requires a combination of the ground and aerial resources. given the Korea's very steep terrain and densely forested areas, the aerial firefightings with the helicopters is a very effective way during the daytime. And ground firefighters are playing an important role at nighttime when winds tends to weaken, and particularly since helicopters cannot operate during those hours. So this is the very specific to Korea. So according to the Korea's weather situation, usually the wind is a little bit calm down at nighttime. So at the time, the ground firefighters go to the field fire site, and then they are doing their jobs on the mountains. And aerial firefightings resources including helicopters and drones. The Korea Forest Service operated 47 firefighting helicopters across 11 regional stations, while local governments and rent approximately 70 helicopters for firefighting. So we have 150 helicopters supported by the militaries and the police and local government. So that's the very crucial resources in firefightings. Ongoing efforts involves developing firefighting technologies using drones. So you can see in the middle of the photos, maybe there is some video clips, spread the chemicals from the drones to the fire site. So the helicopter is very much expensive to for the operations, but drone is more cheaper than the helicopters. But the problem is how to cooperate with those very high technology equipment. So nowadays we are try to introduce the chemicals from the air using those drones. Maybe on the right side, the helicopter spread some retardant to prevent the forest fires. After the fire suppression, in the response phase, just like in the prevention or other steps, many organizations collaborate in the firefightings, including Korea Forest Service, the National Emergency Agencies, the police and Korea Meteorological Administrations and military, even the volunteers from the private sectors. After fire suppression, the burnt area is planned for the restoration. The restoration proceeds in two phases. First, to prevent following risks such as landslide. During the rainy season, landslide is very high. The risk factors for the people. So the damaged area needed to be stabilized, and then long-term restoration take place. Maybe you can see on the bottom, the left side, there is the emergency stabilization measures. The right side, maybe that's the long-term rehabilitation. So you can see the before and after pictures. The efforts including the expanding the forest road and to improve accessibility to firefighter site, enhancing public awareness and fostering the intra-agency cooperation, they are absolutely our homework to develop. The last but not least, the forest fire, not confined to one country's, the efforts. The Korea Forest Service has initiated a fund with the FAO. This collaboration is very much a good model for in the global society, and also the fire suppression. Going together with the other countries. Like during the last July, we sent 150 firefighters to the Canada to help them. So and Australia, they also has a very wonderful system. So maybe among those countries, we put efforts together to respond to this very urgent threat. So I'd like to suggest a couple of collaboration areas. So the maybe we can the exchange it, our specialist for the forest fire fightings. So in the left side, that's the picture captured in the Canada. The Canadian forest firefighters and Korean forest fires working together to respond to the forest fire in Canada last July. And the middle one, the Korea Forest Service sent some of the the firefighters to Australia to have some the joint training programs, so we can develop the technology together, and then we shared our experience together. And then last one is the collaborative partnership with the many partners. I think the OPOM is the very good model in this category. So the KFS will lead those kind of the efforts, and then we do not save any the resources and efforts for the response to the very urgent threat to the global society. I wish this presentation is informative for all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Parkin, for highlighting, really Korea's state-of-the-art data and technology as applied to the 5 Rs across the whole spectrum. And yes, we're happy to apply much of this through a firm and learning from Korea's experience and expertise. So I would like to now hear more from Canada, and we will call on Mr. Michael Norton, Director General of the Northern Forestry Centre of the Canadian Forest Service, who is joining us virtually as well. Mr. Norton, the floor is yours.
It's all okay?
Yes, we hear you now.
Fantastic, thank you. Okay, you should be seeing my presentation, so thank you. Thanks very much to Korea for the opportunity to be part of the event today. I will acknowledge briefly the traditional lands known as Treaty 6 that I'm speaking to you from today, and the many First Nations and Métis people that have been part of the lands that I'm speaking to you from for hundreds, if not thousands of years, in fact. So I will run through a presentation from the Canadian perspective. No surprise to any of you in the room, Canada is a very large country. We are a very forested country, almost 350 million hectares of forest land. That's in the range of 9% of global forest cover. Most of Canada's forests experience fire at some point, and a majority of them, the boreal forest and the montane forests in the west, fire is in fact a naturally occurring and critical part of the ecosystem. And that continues to be true today. It's important to understand a little bit the governance context of forests in Canada to appreciate how we manage forests and fire. The vast majority, 90% of forested land in Canada is, in fact, 94% is publicly owned. 90% though is owned and managed by our provincial and territorial governments. These are subnational governments who have primary responsibility for all aspects of forest management, including fire management. And private lands are really a very small part of the mix, an important part in certain parts of the country, but broadly only 6% of forests are privately held in Canada. And so our governance in this country is set up particularly by the provincial and territorial governments. Again, these are the subnational governments who have primary responsibility for forest management, fire suppression, risk management, and primary responsibility for emergency response, emergency preparation and response. The Government of Canada at the federal level plays an important role in national scale emergency management coordination. We are major players in science and technology, public safety and education, Of course, there are important federal lands, particularly our national parks that we are responsible to manage directly, and international affairs and international agreements that have become so important to us. In the middle of this, we have a very unique organization, the Canadian Interagency Forest Fire Centre. This is actually a non-governmental organization owned and operated by the federal, provincial, and territorial governments, whose role is to coordinate national and international resource support, as well as a planning and strategic information function, and recently also became the home of a program called Fire Smart Canada, which I will come back to later, a key tool for us moving forward. Indigenous, municipal, and regional governments also play a critical role at more local scales. As Ambassador Stewart said earlier, 2023 was an unprecedented year for Canada. At close to 19 million hectares burned, we are in the range of 3 times more forest area burned this year than at any point since we have been keeping records. Over 230,000 Canadians were evacuated from their homes at some point, and some Canadians were in fact evacuated on more than one occasion over the course of the very long season. That even included the capital city of our Northwest Territories for an extended period of time. As has been mentioned, clearly these fires have been a major source of emissions of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. And it was also alluded to earlier, the profound international, even global impact of the smoke from these fires. Very serious public health situation in Eastern North America, in particular, in July, and pictures from that period of time rightly made international news. You can see from the map here that our fire season really extended, as we say, from coast to coast to coast, and over a very protracted period, starting in late April, which for us is very early, and extending well into the fall. And in fact, it is now into December. This is full into Canadian winter. In the province of Alberta, where I live and I'm speaking to you from today, we have almost no snow, which is a very unusual circumstance. And the province of Alberta has 65 wildfires today. Again, continuing that, in fact, in some perspectives, the 2023 fire season is in fact not even complete yet. Clearly, to manage through this very difficult situation, we fully optimized all of our domestic capabilities. Canada is a very fire-prone country. Our provinces and territories have among the best trained and equipped fire services in the world. They were fully mobilized for a very protracted period. There's a system in Canada for requesting assistance from the federal level, and 8 of those requests came in. Again, that is a very high number for us, reflecting situations that were beyond the ability of our provincial and territorial governments to manage. And so the Canadian Armed Forces were also heavily involved in both firefighting and logistic support for evacuations throughout the summer in most parts of the country. As you know, and some of your countries were part of this, we depended heavily on support from our international partners. For sure, my thanks as well to Korea and Australia, and perhaps in the audience there may be representatives from some of the other countries that came to our help, and we could not have managed this summer without your assistance. 12 countries, 7 of those countries are players with whom we have established country-to-country memoranda of understanding, but the nature of the challenge we faced, we did find very efficient ways to work on a temporary basis with 5 additional countries with whom we had never previously worked, and for the first time, we worked with the European Union as well to activate their civil protection mechanism as we leveraged every possible opportunity to secure assistance through the season. Moving forward, I hardly need to tell this particular audience that we are seeing a continuing trend of longer fire seasons, more severe fire behavior, more area burned, and that is only going to continue as climate change continues. In the Canadian context, we do expect fully, and are starting to experience it already, that this challenge will be most severe in our western and northern forests, but forest across the country will experience more fire as we move forward, and thus Canada is in the middle of a long-term strategic trajectory to transform how we manage fire in this country. Fire suppression has always been and will always be a crucial part of how we manage fire. But if we continue to focus only on fire suppression, we will get further and further behind, inevitably. Moving forward, we are shifting our approach much more towards greater preparedness, prevention of unwanted fires, and crucially, risk mitigation. And the Fire Smart program I mentioned earlier is a key tool that helps municipalities and homeowners and infrastructure operators to understand and take steps to address fire risk before fires occur. This is a whole of society undertaking. Ultimately, the government agencies charged with forest and fire management cannot do this alone. There are important levers that need to be played by others, including in the private sector, including at the municipal level, and so on. And the Indigenous people in Canada have a vital role to play in here. Most First Nations and Métis people in Canada have cultural experience and practice with fire that must make an important contribution to the future of fire management. We have charted this path forward through a number of high-level policy documents, including an emergency management strategy for Canada, recently a national adaptation strategy, and specific to wildland fire, we've been guided for many years by a Canadian wildland fire strategy, and all governments are currently working together to develop a wildland fire prevention and mitigation strategy that we are planning to be ready by the spring of 2024. At the federal level, we have invested heavily in this space to make our contributions towards realizing this future. Over the last several budget cycles, the Government of Canada has invested approximately $800 million in initiatives directly related to wildfire, and billions of dollars more that have indirect but very real relevance to transformed fire management in the future. We are building on our emergency management strategies. We are increasing our understanding of risk. We released our first national risk profile as a country that included a chapter on wildfire just earlier this year as a strategic piece to inform decision making. We are investing in firefighter training and equipment acquisition. We are building resilience and emergency management capabilities in First Nations communities. We are investing in our infrastructure to make it more resilient, and we have reinforced fire capacity in our national parks. Recently, additional investments have been announced. We are in the early stages of developing and eventually launching an initiative called Wildfire Sat. This will be the first public wildfire dedicated satellite monitoring system in development now by Natural Resources Canada and the Canada Space Agency. Target launch for this system is 2030. We've also recently announced a Wildfire Resilient Futures initiative with another significant investment over the next 5 years. The entire orientation of this initiative is to expand wildfire prevention and mitigation measures and we will also be establishing a Center of Excellence for Wildland Fire Innovation and Resilience. And we have further invested in our Disaster Mitigation and Adaptation Fund to improve the resilience of communities and infrastructure to disasters, including but not limited to wildland fire. Science and technology must be at the core of planning for a new future. The science of the past will not serve us sufficiently as we move forward into an ever more challenging future. A number of years ago, in 2019, we published a blueprint for wildland fire science in Canada as a strategic orientation intended to align and mobilize research and development players across the science ecosystem in this country. And we have a number of specific initiatives underway, including Wildfire Sat that I've mentioned. We are modernizing and preparing to roll out an updated version of our Canadian forest fire danger rating system that is well known by many countries around the world as well. We have made investments in science through Canadian universities. We are investing in Indigenous traditional knowledge in fire management. We are finalizing work on a new national scale information framework to ensure that we can capture and share data, information, and decision support tools more efficiently across the public sector players in fire management in Canada, and I'll conclude with just a few additional words on global cooperation. Clearly, again, this past fire season has shown how important mutual assistance in emergency situations can be. 2023 set new records, evidently, for how important this is, but it continues a trend for Canada that goes back to 2021, 2018, 2017, 2016, and before, where we have become increasingly dependent on our international partners, and again, very grateful for that. However, I would stress that global cooperation, it is already, and it's important that we strengthen cooperation in areas beyond fire suppression and emergency response, sharing best practice in fire management, sharing new technologies for for various aspects of fire management, including risk mitigation. And we welcome participation in the Global Fire Management Hub that the FAO has announced as one important contributor to fostering deeper cooperation amongst all of our countries. And I will conclude there. And thank you very much again for the opportunity to speak today.
Sure. Oh, yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Norton, and thank you for the collaboration, and we look forward to working with Canada as well. I believe that Mr. Buffon is still online from Australia, so we will call you back. I would probably encourage maybe briefer remarks than you might have been preparing, because we are running out of time a bit, so maybe if we could keep the next set of remarks to about 5 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. What I'll do is I'll just put a little bit more detail in my opening remarks. So if you could move next slide, thanks. Next slide. Sorry, we'll just have to step through a few. I just want to stop there, because one of the things about Australia is what you see here is since 2019 till now, 80% of local government areas have been impacted by disaster. Now, significant areas of that have been fire, but also we have concurrency of cyclones, severe weather, and integrating with flooding, which is happening to us now. Next slide, please. I wanted to highlight the current situation which is happening in the Northern Territory, where we have more than 600,000 hectares that are burning as we speak, having significant impact on pastoralists and Indigenous lands. Next slide. And in particular, you've heard our Canadian colleagues and also our Korean colleagues talking about the importance of understanding Indigenous communities. And right now there are 85 Indigenous communities that are within the burn scar. So we have to make sure that we integrate some of those traditional burn and land management techniques into modern day science and approach. Next slide, thanks. Black Summer, significant part of our history, and I've already spoken about the impacts of that. So if we can go next slide. Next slide. Next slide. The other thing is about not only should we be looking at the firefighting capability, but how do we surge and how do we escalate? And this is Malakuta, which is in Victoria, and we had to do a landside evacuation using our Navy. So you can see when you spoke about the intensity, some of the aspects that we have to take into account, not just using suppression techniques. Next slide. I've already spoken about the workforce, but I think that international and global cooperation becomes an absolute critical factor, but not only in the actual firefighters, but in the science and in emerging technologies, I think is something where we can definitely collaborate a lot better. Next slide. The interface of data, as I said, our National Joint Common Operating Picture, there you have a snapshot where it shows the fire down the east coast of Australia. So this was actually about 6 weeks ago. The fires in Central Australia, the fires in southern Western Australia as well. But through one portal, we can integrate and start looking at that strategic foresight and potential consequences. Next slide. Aircraft, a critical factor, but as was highlighted by our Korean colleagues, they're expensive and also at night they're difficult to use. So we're now exploring though technology where we can use helicopters to fight fires at night, because historically they were easier to fight at night. What we're seeing is fire behaviour that is actually burning to the same intensity. So different technologies, different types of aircraft, but also aircraft are used to actually take mapping, to do line scanning so we can understand the extent of the fire and the intensity. Next slide. I already touched on this. Next slide. Fire danger rating system, an important part. Similar to Canada, we've actually upgraded ours. We're using latest science, latest technology. We went from having 2 fuel loads or fuel types to 22 national fuel types. And we're seeing significant difference in how we can actually forecast, predict and warn the community. Next slide. The predictive services and using even some older technologies like weather balloons to really understand the local weather environment so that we can not only support our firefighters, but actually warn and advise community. Next slide, thanks. I've already spoken about the intelligence, so the use of data, the use of technology becomes critical. Next slide. And then finally, again, I wanted to reinforce the use of the National Coordination Mechanism, which brings together, not just at the operational level, but at the strategic level, all elements of governments, private sector, so that you can deal with fires. And we also use it in the prevention and preparedness aspects and understanding how we can actually start to adapt to the challenge of more intense, more frequent fires. I'll just stop there. Thanks very much for listening, and it's been a pleasure to address this audience today.
Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Buffon, and apologies for having to shorten your intervention there. But thank you, especially for recognizing the importance of Indigenous and community knowledge in fire management. And I'd like to acknowledge some colleagues in the audience from RACOF TC, from the International Savannah Fire Management Initiative, who are really putting that at the core of their approaches to supporting communities. I would like to call on our dear colleague from FAO, Miss Lara Steil. She's in the office on a Sunday, so I'd like to give her a little bit of time. But Lara, we might need to keep your remarks to just 5 minutes to give a little taste of the Global Fire Management Hub. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Amy. Good afternoon to everybody. Can you just let me share my screen? Can you see it in presentation mode?
Yes.
Good. So thank you so much for this event, for the organizers of this event. It's a pleasure to be here. And so I will enter a little bit more in detail about the Global Fire Management Hub that was mentioned before in this session. So starting, I would like to highlight that the FIO is working with fires with the approach that we call integrated fire management. And we are promoting a paradigm shift from a focus on suppression to a holistic approach, taking into account that integrated fire management looks at the physical, biological, ecological, social, political, and technical aspects of fire. So the idea is move from a fire management focused on suppression to this integrated fire management. And of course, we need to have this immersed in a matrix of governance. And so FIO works with this approach with what we call the five R's. The first R is review and analysis, risk reduction, readiness, response, and recovery of post-fire. So as I mentioned, we are developing this fire management hub. The main objective of this hub is to strengthen countries' capacities to implement integrated fire management. And the idea here is to take advantage of all the initiatives that we have around the world. So we are going to work with the key partners for developing this initiative. This initiative was initially launched last year during the World Forestry Congress in Korea, together with UNEP. And we have also as partners the UNDRR, WMO, the Global Fire Monitoring Center that you listened the presentation of Johan Goldamer, the Joint Research Center, regional FAO networks, indigenous networks, and the national and local initiatives, including those initiatives that were presented here today in this session. So this Fire Hub has 5 initial pillars. These 5 initial pillars are knowledge sharing, capacity building, wildfire resilient communities, fire risk assessment and early warning systems, and the policy support. As I mentioned before, the idea is to connect this initiative with all the other initiatives that we have around the world. And I would like to mention here today that we are very excited about the Wildfire Resilient Landscape Network that was launched on the 30th of November at the start of COP. And so initially, I think that this is an initiative that fits very well with the idea of wildfire resilient communities, and we are very excited to collaborate with this new initiative and with the Fire Hub. And so the landscape fire management, the Fire Hub will connect it also with the landscape fire management framework. This was a document that was launched this year during the International Wildland Fire Conference in May in Portugal, and the Fire Hub will be a mechanism to implement this framework. And the Fire Hub is becoming operational through the creation of a small secretariat, and it will be implemented at scale through global, regional, and country projects. One of these projects is the project that FAO has together with the Korean Forest Service that we called a FIRM project. And the idea of this project is to establish an international applicable mechanism to reduce damage and loss by large-scale forest disturbances. This is a 4-year project, and it's being implemented in Cambodia, Laos, Thailand, and Vietnam. This project has 3 main components: risk assessment, risk reduction activities, and integrated risk management. And this project will feed the Fire Hub. And so we have a roadmap for the Fire Hub. We had in November of this year, 2 weeks ago, more or less, the first workshop where we discussed the integration of the Global Fire Monitoring Center and the related networks and partners into the Fire Hub. The second workshop will be next year in March, probably. And in this second workshop, we will discuss the integration of Global Wildland Fire Network and associated national, regional networks and centers. And finally, the third workshop in May next year will be to discuss the Fire Hub operation and financing. And after that, we are planning to show the outcomes of these 3 technical workshops during the next COFO in July of next year. And this was my last slide. Thank you so much for your attention. Over to you, Amy.
Amazing. Thank you for running through that so quickly. So before I turn over to our honorable speaker for closing remarks, I just want to make a few announcements. The first is that I didn't yet acknowledge our dear partners from AFOCO, and thank you for being a partner with us on the AFFIRM mechanism, as well as Rakoff TC, and we're really looking forward to working with you on AFFIRM. There's a bunch of fire events happening tomorrow in the Portuguese Pavilion at 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock, and you'll hear more about the landscape fire governance framework that was introduced here. And then on Monday, or tomorrow's Monday, isn't it? So tomorrow also, okay. We're losing track of time here. Tomorrow also is IFSME's event at 10:30 a.m. in the Australian Pavilion, dealing with Indigenous emissions reduction sector. So join both of those events if you can. And then now we get to our honorable closing remarks from Honorable Sang Seop Lim, Deputy Minister of the Korea Forest Service. Over to you, sir.
Good afternoon. I'm Im Sang-seop, Deputy Minister of Korea Forest Service. On behalf of the Korea Forest Service, I would like to express my gratitude to everyone here today. I also would like to extend my gratitude to Ms. Catherine Stewart, Ambassador for Climate Change of Canada, and Mr. Michael Norton, Director General of the Northern Forestry Center of the Canadian Forest Service, and Mr. Joe Buffon, Deputy Coordinator General of the National Emergency Management Agency of Australia, and Mr. Kabei Jahedi, Director of the Climate Change, Biodiversity and Environment of FAO. It was a great pleasure to have the opportunity to jointly organize this session with all of you. Also, my thanks to Mr. Hong-sik Cho, Special Presidential Envoy of the Republic of Korea, for opening this meaningful event, and to Ms. Hyun Jenny Kim, Ambassador for Climate Change of the Republic of Korea, for taking the time to join us today. Today, we heard firsthand of the devastating wildfires that occurred in Canada this year, damaging over 18 million hectares of forest. The Korea Forest Service had dispatched firefighters to support response to this unprecedented disaster. I would like to take this opportunity to extend my word of comfort to Canadian citizens who have suffered immense losses. In 2019 to 2020, Australia also experienced damages from uncontrollable bushfires, also known as the Black Summer. In 2022, Korea also witnessed its worst wildfires in Korean history, with the damaged area 7 times larger compared to the 10-year average. In the past, wildfires in Korea were more common during the more drier season of spring, from April to May. However, now due to climate change, dry weather persists throughout the year, except for months of the rainy summer season, resulting in wildfires occurring year-round. Climate change is causing an increase in the frequency and scale of wildfires globally, and the need for integrated wildfire management is growing by the day. As mentioned in Dr. Lara Stiles' presentation today, the Korea Forest Service and FAO launched the AFFIRM mechanism at the 15th World Forestry Congress last year to realize and promote integrated wildfire management. The Korea Forest Service intends to support the global fire management hub actualized into a successful platform through the AFFIRM mechanism. I would like to invite global partners to support and participate in this endeavor. Today's event, co-organized by Korea, Canada, Australia, and FAO, will be the valuable opportunity to strengthen our global stance on integrated wildfire management and create synergy. I propose that we enhance cooperation by increasingly exchanges and sharing knowledge between our organizations. Once again, I express my deep gratitude to everyone here. Finally, the Korea Forest Service will continue to actively collaborate with global partners and contribute to international community. Thank you.
And with that, we end our event. A round of applause for all of the speakers, and a round of applause for the participants online on a Sunday. We have many online, so thank you also for being with us today. See you soon.